This fly is a San Juan Worm. It's one of the simplest flies you can tie. It takes just one material and thread. Not many tricks to it. Even if you don't tie, you can tie this fly. It gets a little bit of a bad rap being a worm, but an aquatic worm is actually a bug that's found in the river that trout are used to eating. You can tie it in a lot of different colors just by changing the color of the chenille and the thread. We're going to tie a tan one today with a pink band, but you can tie it in red, you can tie it in orange, wine color, and sometimes even two tones. We're going to use ultra chenille for the body and pink 6/0 unithread for the thread. Now, one of the tricks on a San Juan worm is to determine how long you want your fly to be. I typically tie these relatively long, and then I can always trim them down and make them shorter on the water. A lot of tiers will tie the fly and then burn the ends of the chenille to taper it down. I'm going to show you a little trick that'll make these go a little faster, not that they're not already very fast, but it'll go a little faster and a little smoother. I'm going to burn just the ends of this with the lighter just to taper that down a bit. And you can see how I just feathered the flame there. I'm going to burn either end. So typically, if you burn these ahead of time, the tying process is really seamless now. So that's just going to taper that piece of chenille down. I've got this piece about 3 times the shank length. I can trim it down a little bit shorter on the water. I could even tie this much longer if I needed to. Natural worms will vary from very short to relatively long. I've seen worms maybe 3 or 4 inches long in the water, so keep that in mind as you tie them. We're going to start this fly. I'm tying it on a 3761 tmco hook. That's a 1X long, 2 extra heavy nymph hook. I'm going to start the thread just behind the hook eye, and I'm using this 6/0 unithread, which is a little bigger than standard 6/0 thread. It's a heavier denier. Exactly because it will build up a little faster. You can see how smoothly it's covering this hook shank. I started the thread right behind the eye, and I'm going to wrap right back to the bend, making a smooth thread base. Now I'm going to take my piece of chenille and I'm going to lay it in with a little bit more hanging out the back than is sticking out the front. I don't want it exactly centered. I like it a little bit off center. I'll set the chenille on top of the hook, and I'm going to do a pinch wrap here at the bend to catch that chenille right on top of the hook. I'm going to bind that down with 4 or 5 turns, just a narrow band there at the bend. And I'll lift the front end up, and in tight concentric turns, work the thread back to the front of the hook. I want to keep that hook shank covered. You can see how this thread will add a little bit of color to the fly. I'll lay the chenille down again just behind the hook eye and catch it again with a couple turns of thread. And at this point, you could whip finish and be done. We're going to make a little bit more of a band here to imitate that segment on the worm. And then I'll whip finish right on top. You can see why I want that front end a little shorter. If I'd left that real long, it'd make it much harder to do the whip finish around it. I'll trim that down after my whip finish, add a little shot of head cement to that segment, and you're good to go with your San Juan worm.